Welcome everybody to WWDB's series, Meet the Candidate. We do not endorse any candidate. What we do offer is a chance for every candidate running for any office, regardless of their political affiliation, to come here and talk to you, the voters, about why you should vote for them. So we do this as a public service. We don't charge for it. It's just a way to help educate the voters and make you a little bit smarter about who you're voting for. And a lot of people do not get down to the bottom of the ballot. That's where all your judges and your law enforcement people, like my guest here, which is Stephen Height.
Stan Height.
Stan, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. I've been reading so much that
yes,
all the words
absolutely.
run together. Anyway, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And you are a candidate for sheriff for
I am. For Clark
Las
County.
Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
Yep, for the County of Clark.
For the County of Clark. So let's start off like this.
Okay.
Is there a job description for the sheriff?
Basically, we serve the County of Clark. It's about 8,500 square miles. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, which merged back in 1974 with the city police and the sheriff's office, became Metro, and it has approximately 5,500 employees, about 3,000 commissioned officers, and about 2,500 civilian support staff.
Civilian support staff. These are the people that answer the phone, your dispatchers and
secretaries,
people like that?
Records personnel, a lot of good people.
Okay, so what does this job mean to you? I mean, how do you see this job? What do you think your duties are on a day-to-day basis for those people who don't know, who think you're just out there with a badge showing off? You know.
Basically, we serve the Constitution of Las Vegas, Nevada. So we want to protect the rights of our citizens. We don't want the police being used for things like closing churches and closing businesses that are called non-essential, come and take away your guns, things that might be considered political agendas. I want to make sure that the people are represented, not just the big hotels, the big pharma, the big government. We want to make sure that the people are represented. Keep crime down, investigate crime, and serve the public, basically.
Okay, so that's Metro on the whole. What about the sheriff himself? What are his day-to-day duties? What are your responsibilities? I mean, you get up in the morning and you go to the office, and what do you do?
I'm going to facilitate the needs of my officers to support and take care of the community. Basically, whatever those needs are. If it's funding, if it's just providing a truck, if it's providing an intermediary person, advocate for something. If a citizen's got a complaint about something that's not being taken care of, I'm going to be the facilitator. I'm going to make sure that we get the job done, and I'll have a staff that'll be assisting me doing that.
Okay. So basically, mostly administrative type stuff.
Yes, it will
Coordination,
be. But my leadership style is more where I want to be a hands-on, participative type leader. I want to make sure I'm in the briefings. That's going to be something that it has not been done in the past.
Okay, what do you mean by, and I'm asking these questions as a layperson, because I'm a voter, and I want to know who I'm voting for. So when you say you want to be in the briefings, what exactly does that mean?
Every morning before the police officers go to work, they sit down, they discuss the latest information that they have to attack crime, to assist the public in whatever events may be coming up. And the sheriff needs to be a part of that, in my opinion. I've never seen it. I was a police officer for 30 years with Metro, and I've retired. And so my entire time, I never saw my sheriff. If I had a concern, I'd bring it up to my sergeant, but basically my sergeant couldn't, he'd have to go through 6 layers of rank before he'd get to the sheriff or be able to be addressed.
But isn't that SOP? You go through the
chain of
command?
It is.
I mean, you have to have some kind of structure there.
We do.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that I'm involved in it.
Okay.
I don't want it to just be handled by people that are taking care of it, but not really taking care of it. I want to make sure the job's done.
Okay.
So, and I want to know what's going on. I want to have a pulse in the community. I want to have a pulse on my officers. So, like I said, the briefings take place and before their shift, and they're at different times. Day shift, it's early in the morning. Swing shift, it's in the afternoon, and graveyard, it's in the evening. So, if I'm showing up at these briefings, they're going to know me. They're going to be able to approach me. They're going to feel a little more comfortable discussing things. I won't be able to address every briefing, of course. I won't be able to address every concern, but I just like being hands-on participative. I want to be out in the field knowing what's going on, and I'd like my my subordinates, my support staff to be doing the same thing. I want the officers need they're the ones out there every day doing the job, and they need to have their concerns supported. So they're out there, they've got a problem, they go to the sergeant. Sergeant says, well, you know what, that's above my head, so just basically do what you can do. Well, I want to make sure it gets done. I want to make sure we have available to them what they need to do their jobs.
Okay, so I'm kind of on the upper end of the age scale.
So am I.
When I was a kid,
I'm with you.
We had the beat cop.
Right.
Does that, do the officers today have a specific area that they handle on a regular basis, or are they just out there, okay, today you're going over here, today you're going over there, or, hey, Joe, this is your area, and, you're responsible for what goes on here, involvement in the community? I don't see much of that anymore. Is that something that you're interested in doing, or you think is effective?
Well, the officers are assigned a certain area each day. Generally, it's the same area because they become familiar with it. They know the streets. They know the type of call patterns that they get. What you're talking about, I believe, the beat cop, where they walk around and have relationships with the citizens. It's a little difficult because we do cover 8,500 square miles.
No, I don't see them walking the streets.
Right. Their beats generally would cover, in the patrol car, they'll cover 80, 90 miles in a shift.
Yeah.
So they're busy. Now that we have more substations and broken down the areas a little bit, the areas aren't as big that they patrol, but they're still large areas, so that it's not like they're going to be out of their cars. They have to get from one call to another. And our resources are low right now. We don't have the officers that we need to cover adequately, and that's one of my things I'm going to have to address. I'm going to have to get us back up to speed.
So let's talk about that, because that's an interesting. We've all heard the word defund the police, and I think it's a misnomer for basically reassigning or changing some of the duties. Or are there things that your officers go out to on a regular basis that somebody else can handle? Or do you think that every one of these instances, it's important for an officer to be there?
Well, the officers are there to assist the public, and so they're going to be called, and it can be a crime-related or it can be a support-related issue. Generally, it's going to be a police officer, a commissioned police officer. He's going to have law enforcement authority. So we have support staff that can assist those officers in getting jobs done. We have advocates, that can assist us as well. And civilian staff. That we'll have civilians come out and process the scenes. Let's say, like in a burglary, your house gets broken into, certain windows attacked. So we'll have civilian staff come out and they'll process that window.
After the officer has been there. I was talking more like you've got a neighbor dispute. You got two neighbors that are fighting.
That's a
over
police officer. That's a police officer. Yeah.
Really? You think
Yes.
that's they need to be out there?
I do. They're trained in dealing with conflict,
right?
And that's what it is. It's a conflict. We're not going to solve their problem, but we're going to reduce the conflict.
Okay.
And we can refer them if there's areas that we feel we can help them with to adjust in their conflict. We can refer them, marriage counseling,
right,
things like that. But basically, it's a conflict, and it can escalate quickly. So we need a trained police officer that knows how to try to de-escalate the conflict itself.
Other than seniority or time on the job or experience, because you're an older officer, and I don't mean you specifically.
No, yeah.
Do you think that there could be different levels of law enforcement that for dealing with different kinds of situations. Do you think that that's a possible thing, or do you think that an officer should be trained in every kind of, and regardless whether it's a shootout or a domestic dispute, the same officers should show up to that kind of thing?
I do. I believe the officer, like I said, it's the officer's response to that address, say that domestic violence address, is definitely, it's like I said, it's a conflict. It's two people angry at each other.
Sure.
And those are dangerous calls. That's not something I would send just a average citizen to, like, okay.
No. We're not talking about average citizens. I'm talking about someone who
somebody
has
trained
a law
in
enforcement
okay.
responsibility.
Okay.
He is a law enforcement officer, but he is trained specifically to deal with that kind of problem so that other more experienced officers can deal with more serious problems.
So you're talking specific type of call, specific type of an officer sent.
Right. In other words,
I don't think we could break it down. The differences in the calls, there may be a domestic, but it involves 20 different type of perspectives.
Sure.
So, yeah, to send a one type of an officer to a type of call and another type of an officer to a different call. No, I think the officer has to learn to basically respond to the calls, and if there is, like, if we have a crime situation, like let's just say it's a robbery, and we can call a robbery detective to come out and follow it up, and do the investigation part of it. The officer gets there, he's an emergency responder, that's what he does. So he responds, he diagnoses the situation, and determines what we need from that point. So yes, I think it's the police officer that's trained in the general aspects of response. So we do need a trained police officer that can handle the types of situations that we get in Clark County, and then they can request additional people.
Okay.
Maybe, for instance, maybe a police officer respond to somebody that's going crazy. Well, that person may need medical treatment, so
Right.
he calls for medical.
There are I've worked with some officers who are specifically trained to deal with people with autism and those kinds of. Are our Metro officers getting any kind of training about that?
Yes, in the academy it's called Crisis Intervention Team, and it's something that's taught in the academy. And so they are learning to deal with people that are under anxiety or stress due to mental illness or due to a drug overdose of some type. The George Floyd situation would be a perfect example of this. He took some fentanyl, and it didn't affect him immediately. They addressed George Floyd in a criminal aspect, but then he all of a sudden became under a medical crisis. The officers really didn't recognize it immediately, and didn't get medical until it was too late. Until he was passed because of the situation that he was under. So, a crisis intervention trained police officer hopefully will recognize those elements of the personality disorder at the time and get medical out there to assist.
Okay. Well, I'm talking about there was an instance where there was a therapist who was sitting down on the sidewalk with a patient who was mentally disturbed.
Okay.
And I believe he was autistic. And so if you've had any experience with autistic people, any kind of excitement or
Gets
can
agitated.
escalate the situation in there. And so they were sitting on the sidewalk, and the therapist is got his hands up, laying down, and he gets shot. And I think that the officers were not trained specifically enough to address that situation, and so. We all see them, and you see the good cops and you see the bad cops. You're going to find that anywhere. I don't care who you are or where you are. In any profession, you're going to find good and bad, and people who have lapses in judgment. What kind of training do our officers go through, or do you believe that they are being sufficiently trained to deal with the public today?
I believe they're being sufficiently trained, but again, there'll be instances where they're going to have no idea how to handle a situation. Unfortunately,
Right.
We have a shortage of experienced police officers right now. Just like I explained, 75% of our police force has less than 5 years on, and it takes 5 years to learn the job. It really does.
Why do you think that is?
It's morale issues because of the defund population, police reform, stuff like that. The whole COVID thing, I think, had a major effect on it. Poor leadership, I think, has an effect on it. There's a lot of factors that affect why police are not happy on their jobs. Micromanagement, not having their back, not protecting the officers. So there's a lot of reasons that I've been, addressed by many officers that have worked with me and for me, that how bad the morale is right now in the department, and people are just trying to get out as fast as they can. So we're losing our mature officers.
Right.
Excuse me. Yeah, we're losing the maturity of our police force, and we weren't getting at the bottom end. We weren't getting new officers because they were required to get the vaccine before they could be admitted to the academy.
Right.
And they didn't want it. They recognized the dangers of that vaccine. So now it's like there was no freedom of choice in their medical issues.
So how many open positions are there on Metro currently?
I don't know the numbers. I just know that we're down.
I mean,
yeah,
you're,
I would say
10% down. 50%
I would say
down?
20%.
20%?
But that is an estimate.
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
I don't expect you to have the
Right.
exact number.
Yeah, because I'm not currently employed by Metro.
Right.
I did my 30 years and retired.
How long have you been retired?
14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So things have changed. There'll be a little bit of a learning curve,
Right.
but I'll pick it right up.
Yeah. Why would you want to go back after being out of it for 14 years? What spurred you to say, you know what, I'm going to run for sheriff now?
I have to be honest with you. The last election, I felt there was fraud in that election.
Okay.
And since then, our government is growing at a rapid rate, and our rights were shrinking. I could see things that were happening to our civil rights, and I got scared. I'm afraid of our government.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of what they're going to do, and I'm honestly afraid.
So you think that Metro can change that?
Well, I think I can have an effect on it.
Okay.
First off, my first goal was to remove all mandates from Metro, so we can get rid of that vaccine mandate. And then we're not going to enforce things where they're closing our churches or closing our non-essential businesses, I was afraid they were going to be coming for our guns, things like that. Metro, definitely the sheriff is the highest authority figure in the Clark County. So he's not responsible to the judge. He doesn't work for the governor, doesn't work for the federal government. He's responsible to the people, the Constitution, we the people. So that's who the sheriff represents. And so that's very important that the public understands that. So when we get a dictatorial type government that comes in, and like you see in Canada right now, like you see in Australia, I mean, these are places that were just like America a year or two ago. And now they've become authoritative, communistic in nature, and they're using the police to do that. And that's what spurred me to come out of retirement and run for sheriff, because I want to get a level head into that. I want to get some maturity. I want to get some responsibility, some common sense into the police department. I want to make sure that we're not used to do these kind of enforcement actions that are oppressive to the people.
So that's a difficult thing to say, and I'll tell you why. Based on my military experience, is that if the governor or the president or some elected official comes to you and says, this is what we want you to do, you're not going to follow that? Or I'm asking. I'm not trying to.
It's a good question. It's a very good question, because I don't want to be another authority figure.
Right.
So, I mean, you've got a governor that's telling you something that, let's just say, is dictatorial, and is not good for the community.
Wait.
I'm just saying, if that happens.
Who decides whether
That's
or
what I'm
not
trying
it's
to tell you.
dictatorial?
I'm just saying,
Okay.
if a governor does something like that, that's considered. I considered what he was doing as dictatorial myself. It was my own personal opinion.
Okay.
So now, as sheriff, I'm going to be making those same determinations, and so I could be dictatorial as well. So that's where you need to vet your candidates and make sure you're getting the sheriff you want.
Right.
My opinion is the Constitution is what we need to support as a police agency.
And what does the Constitution say about
Freedom of choice. They don't.
If the government the governor comes to you and says, Stan, we want you to do this.
What is it? Do what?
Okay, so
take our guns.
No. I'll give you
Pick one.
I'll give you an example. So my business was, of course, affected by the COVID.
Okay.
Okay. I was forced to shut down because I was non-essential, so I was shut down for a couple of months. Now I have relatives who have died from COVID, so I pretty much supported that. Now, I had been into the studio off and on half a dozen times. I had to check on equipment and things like that, but the public was not coming in. And at a couple of times, Metro was walking through our complex just to make sure that those non-essential. So are you telling me that you do not think that that was right?
I am telling you that I do not think that that was right.
Okay, and why not?
Because there was no science behind it. It was strictly an agenda by a political force. It was not backed by science.
And what do you
Now
think,
the first
what do
30.
you think the reason was for that then?
Oh, there's probably a lot of reasons that are totally hidden from the public.
Okay.
It could be a control factor. It can be many other factors. But the first 30 days or so, I think the governor. I mean, it's in the statutes. The governor has the right for emergency response, and that would be to close businesses or do whatever we have to do in the emergencies.
Right.
Absolutely. And so that would have to be respected, and we would have to assist and participate in that. But once the science is showing that it's no longer applicable, and the economy is getting destroyed, and people are being harmed more by the what so-called cure, then I think the sheriff can step in and protect the people and the businesses.
So you would advocate martial law?
No, I would not.
In a sense
No.
I'm just because
Resisting
what I'm hearing you say,
martial law. Resisting martial law.
But if you refuse the orders of the governor and decide what should be done yourself, in other words, you're saying no, he's full of crap. This is what we're going to do. You are. Isn't that the same thing?
Resisting martial law.
Right.
Yes.
But
Yes.
It's the other side of the same coin.
It is. I'm protecting the community from a martial law that is not backed by science.
Okay, but it's your opinion of what protecting the community
Exactly.
is.
It is, and that's why
I'm not trying to be adversarial. I'm trying to.
That's why I'm telling you.
Yeah,
You need to
okay.
vet your candidates and see if you
Right.
believe in who that is.
Which is why we're doing this.
Exactly.
So,
Because I don't want people to vote for me because they see a sign.
yeah.
I don't want people to vote
And
for me.
that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, it is.
That's why I started doing
is.
this. Because I noticed, I mean, the impetus for this show was judges. And I realized that, they get halfway down the ballot and they just, that's it, I'm not doing that anymore. And, we've had some pretty far out judges in Clark County. And
That's why I want to impress upon your audience, basically vet your candidates, because the sheriff's race is a very important race. If you don't search out who you want for sheriff, that sheriff has a lot of authority, and you got to make sure that he's on your side. Basically, he's on the same page as you.
Right,
let's
right.
say.
No, and you're exactly right.
Exactly.
Because the sheriff, Metro, judges, city council, the county supervisors affect our daily lives so much more than the federal government does. And we, when I say we, I mean that in the editorial sense, voters are ignorant about who they're voting for. They'll drive down the street and, like you say, I saw his sign on the way here, I'm going to vote for him. I'm going to vote for all Republicans this time, or all Democrats, or all women, or everybody whose name starts with R is going to get my vote. And they really have no clue who they're voting for. So
if I'm sounding like I'm making no sense, then I would.
No.
I'm just saying, if I sound that way, I would expect no support from the community.
Right.
But if I sound like I am making sense, I would like people to hear it, identify with it, and say, you know what, I agree with that, and vote for me.
It's not my job to
No, I know that. I'm talking to the audience
there
when I
you
say
go,
that.
and that's what you should be doing. Is
Exactly.
Because there are people out there that agree with you, and there are people out there that don't.
And it's not just the sheriff, it's the school board.
Yes.
It's the city council, it's the state assembly, it's judges. I mean, these are all the county commission. Our county commission voted 5-2 to determine that the vaccine should not be talked about in a negative way. And if you do talk about it in a negative way, you can be charged with dangerous speech. That's against our First Amendment constitutional right.
Like you can't say the word gay in Florida.
Yeah.
It's the
I
same
didn't know
thing.
that. I didn't know that. But
that's a bill.
But I'm talking about
in the school districts, they can't say that.
So that's against your constitutional rights, and we're not going to allow the police to be used as pawns to enforce that kind of stuff. The school board, when parents come in front of the school board and say, what kind of curriculum are you teaching my children? And then the school board says you are domestic terrorists for even arguing about it. That's unconstitutional. And if they're going to start coming after parents because they're concerned about what's being taught to their kids, we're not going to allow the police to be used for that. And that is why you need to vet not just your sheriff, but like you said, John, all the way down ballot. Your county commissioners, your city and state assemblies, your judges, because your judges rule on this stuff. You need to know that you have a judge that's got some common sense, not somebody that's bought and paid for by the MGM or bought and paid for by, Costco or whatever.
Right.
The big money, the
And
big pharma, big
some
government.
experience on the bench. Or,
Yeah.
that has at least
Yeah.
been in a courtroom.
So that's why I decided I want to run. I want some common sense. I'm not running so that I can buck the authority of the governor. That's
Yeah.
not my purpose.
Well,
It's
it may
only
not
when
be the same governor.
That's right. But if it is the same governor and like after the elections we get back with the mandates, it's proven that they don't work. It's harmful. So I'm not going to allow the police to be used for that. Now it is another opinion against the governor, but that's why I'm running.
Right.
Because I want to use some common sense. Now, if I get scientific evidence or documentation or presentation that tells me, hey, we do need to do this, well, I'm not going to usurp the governor's authority. I'm not going to tell the governor, okay, no. I'm going to, of course, I want what's best for the community.
Sure.
I just don't want a political agenda being used against the people in Clark County. That's my main.
I don't think anyone does.
Well, I think there are people that are agenda-driven, and they're in our government.
Right.
I feel that our government is infested all the way up, all the way down. So
Infested with what? I'm sorry.
we're infested with people that are bought and paid for.
Oh, yeah.
That are not out there
But
for the people.
that has always
I can
been
only
and will always be that way as long as we allow money in politics.
that I can only affect the police department and
Right.
who the police department comes in
course.
contact with, and so that's my.
That's not entirely true.
I mean, I can
Because you can go to the voting booth and vote.
right, and I will.
And that's how you control the situation.
I will. There's
Not by bitching
many
about
candidates.
it, but by going and voting.
Thank you for that, John, because you're right, absolutely right.
It's in the last presidential election, 47% of registered voters voted.
I've got a bigger statistic than that.
47%, only 47% of registered voters. Now, it was even a smaller percentage of people who were eligible to vote. So in other words, out of 10 people, you have 3 people are making decisions for all 10.
Do you know how many people are in Clark County?
About 2 million now, right?
2.3 million.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people determine who the sheriff was in the last race?
No.
135,000.
Okay.
Out of 2.3 million people, 135,000 votes.
Wait, okay, so we're talking people, but let's
That
talk about
voted.
eligible voters.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But I mean, out of 2.3 million, there's got to be a lot of eligible voters.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of children and,
Sure.
and people that aren't.
Right.
Ready.
But I'm saying even if half,
Yeah.
even if half of the people are eligible to vote, and then half of those are registered to vote, and then half of those vote, that's what we got.
If just 1 million out of the 2.3 million are registered to vote or eligible to vote,
Right.
and only 135,000 picked the sheriff last election.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We need to get you to vote. We need you. My purpose is not only to get you to vote, it's to vet your candidates and hopefully vote for me for sheriff.
Cool.
But
Anything else you'd like to share, or anything that we haven't covered, or?
check out my website, stanheitforsheriff.com. My last name is spelled HYT, so stanheit4, F-O-R, sheriff.com. See if I match up to your ideals, to your agenda, because I'm here for the community. I don't want to do anything that the community doesn't want. I'm here to support the community. And the Constitution is my main purpose for running. I want to protect our constitutional rights. I don't want people coming for our guns. I don't want people shutting down your business because they considered it non-essential. Is your business a non-essential business?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. All I do here is.
You just shot down my argument because.
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I didn't. Yeah, it hurt like hell, and it cost me a lot of money because.
But it was essential to you, wasn't it?
It was essential to me,
That's
but
what I'm
it wasn't
saying.
essential to the public.
If the public.
And that was my problem.
Okay, the way I look at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is
Okay.
a business is essential to that person that owns it, and it's essential to that person, those people that use it.
Like a brothel.
So if you have Well, if you have a business and people use it, it's essential to both you and the people that use it.
Right.
It may not be essential to
Like
the
casinos,
governor,
so-
or it may not be
so
essential to the president of the United States
I mean,
because they don't use it.
They shut down the casinos. They shut down restaurants. They shut down bars, tattoo parlors. So yeah, it hurt like hell. But I'm still here. I'm still alive, and I have relatives who weren't because they. And I'm not trying to get into any kind of a discussion here, other than
No, you have a right to your opinion and how you feel about it.
I have two cousins, brothers, that are anti-vaxxers. The one just died 6 weeks ago from COVID, not from any other related shit, but actually from COVID. His brother's now freaking out because he's dead. His brother's dead, and he could have been alive.
The shot wouldn't have protected him. The shot doesn't protect you from getting COVID, doesn't protect you from transmitting COVID. It's strictly a political agenda thing. It has nothing to do with protecting you from COVID. I can
Okay.
tell you that by the science.
Okay.
I mean, the
Wait,
kids that are being vaccinated,
Right.
50-1 are being killed by the shot compared to the COVID.
So you're
50-1. 50 kids will die from the shot compared to one kid that'll die from COVID. That's a statistic.
Okay. Where can we find this statistic?
In the CDC.
Okay. And that's here in the U.S.
That's the
No,
one
I mean,
that's
are you
telling
talking
you.
about kids in the U.S.?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. More people die from the shot than from COVID.
Okay.
I've got videos that are being sent to me of people within a day of getting the shot or falling over dead that weren't even sick.
Okay.
It's all over. I mean, video after video, study after study. Europe is coming out with it everywhere. I mean, you cannot force somebody to take a chance on their life with this shot. I mean, I just think it's totally unconstitutional. And
Okay, so what about flu shots?
totally the same way. If you want the COVID shot,
Okay.
I'm
what
not
about-
against you.
What about smallpox?
That is actually a vaccine.
Yes, I know it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not polio, smallpox. I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all. I'm just against this COVID shot because there is an agenda behind this thing that is not for the people. It's not there for the people. It hurts people.
Okay.
And it's a freedom of choice. That's the way I look at it.
Okay.
You want the vaccine? I'm going to support your right to go get that vaccine. I don't agree with it, but I will support your right to go get it.
And I'm the same way. If you don't want to get it, okay.
Right, but there are people that say you have to get it.
Right.
There are people that say if you don't get it, move out,
Right.
get out of the country.
Yeah.
Well, I don't feel a person has to get out of the country because they don't want to get the shot. And I don't feel somebody has to not be allowed to be an employee with Metro because he doesn't want to take a chance on. A police officer takes a chance every day when he goes to work. I mean, it's a dangerous job.
Sure.
Why should he risk his health by taking a shot that's killing people? And I'm not saying it's killing everybody.
Right.
I'm just saying it is killing people. When you mandate something that everybody should do, there's going to be a certain segment of that population that's going to be harmed.
Right.
Even the polio, even the smallpox was killing people. Very small amounts. I mean, I'm talking, 1 in 10,000
Right.
were harmed by it. So what I'm saying is it should be voluntary. It should not be mandatory. And that's my...
Well, but in a sense, it is voluntary.
No, it isn't.
No, you have a choice.
No, you really don't.
Yes, you do. Because the choice is, okay, I don't want this shot. I can't work for Metro. So I have to choose. Do I want to work for Metro or do I want to not get the shot?
In that respect.
That's a
okay?
choice.
But what about somebody that's got 15, 20 years in a career and
They still have a
and he's
choice.
older?
They still
Yeah,
have
he can
a choice.
he can lose his home, he can lose his
Lose
family,
pension.
yep, and everything.
Yep.
And totally
But
go
it- but it
bankrupt and be
still have a
homeless.
choice.
That's really not a choice. That's not a choice, John.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's a bad
All right.
choice. I'm not saying it's
Okay.
a good choice,
All right.
but it's still a choice. And I'm just messing with you a little bit.
Well,
so.
okay. I mean, it is a choice in that, yes, you can just become homeless and not have a career.
Right.
I know many people that were drummed out of the military, drummed out of, what broke my heart was watching all these healthcare workers. They saw the harm. They knew the dangers in that shot. And they said, no, I'm not taking that shot. They saw people come and get shot and fall over dead.
Yeah.
I mean, the Tiffany Dover, the face of the shot at the beginning, Oh, I'm the nurse. I took my shot. I feel good. She falls over in front of the camera and dies. Just right in front of everybody.
I missed
they
that.
They covered it up.
Yeah.
They said she didn't really die. Well, she did. There's a death certificate of her. She died. And that was 15 minutes after taking the shot.
Gotcha.
And so all these health workers, these poor health workers, being escorted out of their jobs because they refused to take that shot. And it just broke my heart. They're fellow people they worked with for years and years. Look at our military. It was decimated by people that refused to take that shot. We lost more people in the military through not taking a shot than we ever did in any war. Our military was decimated because of the vaccine requirements. And that's not voluntary to me. That is not voluntary. Yes, they gave up their careers. But when you go take that shot, you can say to yourself, okay, well, I don't want to take the shot, but I want to continue working in the military. I've got 27 years. I need 2 more to retire. Okay, I'll go. And that form that you fill out says I voluntarily do this. You're not voluntarily doing it. I'm sorry. You're doing it because I don't want to lose my job.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go homeless. And I've worked 27 years towards this career. That's wrong. And as a sheriff, we're talking about something that this is beyond my scope.
Right.
I can't.
We got off on the tangent a little bit. But
this is just my personal feelings about it.
But that helps people make a decision.
Exactly.
Because they're either going to agree with you and vote for you, or disagree with you and not vote for you. So
exactly.
And you there are what, 2 other candidates? There's 3 of you running for sheriff.
Well, there's actually 6 others.
Okay.
There's 3 others that I don't see how they're on the ballot because they're not they've never been police officers. The Nevada statute says you have to have you have to have earned a post certificate and worked 5 years as a police officer.
Okay.
And this is kind of strange to me. The 3 of us that were in this race from the beginning, we're all retired Metro personnel, but the other 3 are people that just got in it. They paid their $100 and got in it. I don't see how they're eligible, but they're on the ballot. So there's 6 of us total.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Let's say that for some weird reason one of those people gets elected to sheriff. If they don't meet the qualifications, what happens?
I don't know. That's up to the Secretary of State.
Okay.
I don't see how they can even be on the ballot.
Yeah,
I would think they would vet that.
Yeah.
I would think they would vet that.
If they don't qualify, I mean, don't you have to fill out some kind of form? And
I thought I would be presenting my police ID that showed that I was a police officer,
right,
and how long I was a police officer, but I didn't. All he asked was for a driver's license and $100. That was it.
Okay.
So I don't see how the other 3 candidates that are on the ballot, and I'm sure they're all good guys. I don't want to disparage them in any way.
Yeah.
They just, in my opinion, are not qualified to understand what police work's about at all. They may be good leaders, but they have no police experience whatsoever. And I would think you need some experience to run a police department.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I mean, to know how to facilitate what police officers need, what the community needs. And I'm sure they have concerns, political concerns.
Right.
We don't like what's happening here, like the Constitution. We don't like it being violated here. We don't like this. We don't like that. But still, to run a police department, I would think you'd need some kind of police experience. And 3 of the candidates.
They should go somewhere where it doesn't take any experience, like the Assembly or the Senate, or
those would be
or
great.
Just anybody can run.
Where they can legislate properly, yes. And we need those.
And that's a good question too, because I know that I've had the opportunity to have some judges in here and law enforcement and public defenders and things like that. And now I've completely lost what my question was.
Oh no.
No. It's I know what it was. There is a term called legislating from the bench. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes, I am.
Is that
judicial legislating?
Yeah, and I've heard that some of that goes on in Metro at the lower levels. Are you aware of or have heard anything
in what
like
way?
that?
Could you give me an example? Because I'm not aware of it.
And I'm making this up. I don't.
Okay.
I'm not giving.
I may
any
know
specific,
it. I just may not be understanding.
Right. It's like I'm a police officer and I come out to a crime scene or some kind of a scene, and in my judgment, you didn't break the law, so
Okay.
I'm not going to arrest you or bring you in.
It's called police discretion.
Or no. I agree with police discretion. You have to have that.
Right.
You have to have a certain amount of that. But I'm talking about things like It's basically the other way. Yes, you broke this law, but there is no law about what they're breaking. They're just going to arrest them for something that
Can't do it.
doesn't exist.
Can't do it. That's bad police work. That's misappropriation of your authority.
Okay.
We serve the Nevada Revised Statutes. It's called the NRS.
Right.
We call it the NRS.
Right.
So if it's not in there, we can't arrest you for a crime.
Okay.
It has to be a law in the Nevada Revised Statutes.
Which is gets me to my real point,
Okay.
and that is education. This is a personal opinion. I do not feel that most officers have enough training and education to be law enforcement officers. I think that, this is extreme, not my opinion. I'm using it to be extreme, but an attorney goes to school for 4 years. I think, and how long is the academy?
6 months.
6 months. Don't you think it should be a little longer? Aren't there things that you think should be included in their curriculum to make them better officers?
Here's how we address that, John. Basically,
Please do, yeah.
we have a 6-month academy.
Right.
And that 6-month academy doesn't just address laws, it addresses safety issues, it addresses procedural issues, it addresses policies, department policies.
So it's like a boot camp.
It is, and it's got a lot of factors involved. So
Okay.
the law is part of it, and it's definitely nowhere near enough time to know all the laws.
Right.
But the criminal laws are basically what we enforce, not all the laws. An attorney debates all the laws.
Right.
So it's a smaller section of the NRS that they have to be familiar with.
Okay.
So they got 6 months where they are trained. Then they've got another year where they're with a field training officer, which is a senior officer.
Right, on the job training.
So they're getting additional training through that. That's about a year and a half.
Right.
And like I said, then they're out in the field, and in the field, they've got their sergeant, they've got senior officers where if they don't know how to handle something, they draw upon their experience. So that gets them through to where they're learning and learning and learning. And from there, we have what you call in-service training. Every year, we're required to have a certain amount of hours.
And that was going to be my next question. Is there
We have in-service
a requirement
training.
for ongoing training?
Ongoing training. Every year, we have a certain amount, and we even have elective where we can pick our own training. But yes, so we're constantly under training. We're always under training. Is it enough? That some officers do well, some officers still need more. Some officers learn slower than others, some officers learn quickly. But like I said, the problem we have right now is a depletion of our force. 75% of our force has less than 5 years on. So there's a less amount of senior officers to draw experience from, to draw education from.
Right.
And those guys that are still learning, they're like sponges. They want to learn, but it takes time. It's experience.
Yeah.
Some of these young officers are still living at home with their parents, and they've got a gun and the ability to influence somebody's safety and life. So yes, is it enough? It depends on where you're coming in at the time of that experience. Some officers, no, it's not. They're woefully undertrained to experience a catastrophic event that they may be thrown upon. But you just pray that you got them to the point where they can continue learning and continue to get better before something happens that they're not equipped to handle. And if they are equipped, if it does happen, you've got other experienced officers that'll join in and lead in those situations, because it's not just one officer dictating one situation.
Right.
So
how will you handle bad cops? And you're going to have them in any. So
when you say bad cops, there's two different kinds of things that I look at.
Please.
One is honest mistakes. Police officers are not trained well, that are making mistakes, do things wrong, lose a radio, go through an intersection, hit a car. Those are the kind of things that are forgivable, that we can. I believe in second chances. Okay. Then you got the black heart, an officer that's out there abusing people. It's out there, maybe even robbing people.
Right.
Prosecute. First off, termination. Second, prosecution. I don't believe in just letting things slide when we've got criminal activity taking place by police officers that are sworn to.
You should be held to a higher standard.
Absolutely.
And
so we don't just dismiss them; we're going to prosecute.
Okay.
But I'm talking
because
the heart.
There is that esprit de corps that he's a fellow officer.
Not when it comes
we have to cover his ass.
They do that.
That happens.
Well, yes, and it's mostly for the mistakes. they'll cover for a mistake.
Of course,
You know.
and I'm not talking about mistakes. I'm talking
Okay.
about
I don't
like
see-
you say, the black heart.
I don't see too many officers protecting somebody that's out there slapping people around or, I mean,
Being a dick.
being a dick is one thing, but actually abusing people.
Right.
I mean, there are people that are just dicks.
Yeah.
And we hope we don't get those. We hope that we can convert them into not being like that. And if we can't, then we remove them from the public.
Okay.
And
And that's what I was looking to hear.
yeah, absolutely. We remove them from the public contact,
Yeah.
ability to relate with the contact, with the public. But I'm hoping that our selection process it's going to be difficult because we sometimes you relax your standards when you want something, and I've seen it done. And I can't say wholeheartedly we're not going to do that because I need officers right now. I need people.
Right.
And I may have to give some people the benefit of the doubt, and it may cost me. They may be people that will make me pay for that early judgment in them, that early lack of judgment in them. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
But don't you think that I mean, you're making an argument for what we talked about earlier, and that is not necessarily having a police officer show up to a situation, that have someone else taking care of that, so that officer can better use his skills than just.
Hopefully we're trained to respond to whatever we arrive at.
Right.
And if we're not, then we get help.
Right.
That's just the way it works.
But
we get help.
That's what I'm saying. If you don't have the help, if you don't have the other officers to draw from,
Then we're in
because
trouble.
you're shorthanded.
Then we're in trouble.
So how do you? That's what I'm saying. Couldn't you? Can you find another way of look, instead of dealing, and I can't think of a specific situation at the moment, but in this particular situation, you know what? It would be better if this guy went out and talked to these people instead of having an officer show up. I'm asking that. It's not.
So
I'm not.
how do I
advocating it.
prepare for that situation by having somebody that's trained in that's not going out every day as a police officer? How do I do that?
Well, who decides whether or not a police officer should show up to a situation? I guess that's the key question right there.
When a citizen calls the police and asks for help,
Right.
he's going to get a police officer that's been trained in how to handle every type of situation that police officers that
you
are
face.
typically facing. Yeah. So that's basically, the police officer is trained in everything. Now, is he perfectly trained? Is he capable of?
Nobody's perfectly trained.
Right. So that's my point. When he gets there, he handles it to the best of his ability. If he can't handle it, he calls for a supervisor. Supervisor gets there. He needs more help. We get more officers. It's the way it works.
I understand that. Yes, I'm talking about lesser situations where, if so, you get two neighbors fighting over a fence, right? So if you have the neighbor across the street come over and say, "Hey guys, yeah, get this out," but when you have an officer show up, doesn't that automatically, immediately escalate the situation?
I hope not, because you're calling because there's a conflict.
Right.
That's why you're calling the officer.
I
So he's
understand.
trained to
Conflict resolution.
calm the conflict. Yeah.
Okay.
So just because he's got a militaristic uniform, he's got a personality too, and he can
Hopefully.
address. Yeah, he address those people as people, as everyday peers.
Yeah.
I mean, our police officers are made up of football coaches, your neighbors. They're made up of your brothers and sisters. They're
I have friends who are retired Metro. So.
there you go. I mean, these police officers are your neighbors. They're the people that relate to you every day. So I'm hoping that when a police officer, just because he's in uniform, the uniform is to identify him as somebody. Oh, when I'm in trouble, I need this.
Right.
I recognize safety over here. When I see a uniformed police officer, I don't. There are people that tell you they're scared and fear of this police officer because I might get a ticket, I might get thrown in jail. Well, he's not going to throw you in jail unless you do something that causes you to throw him in jail. Maybe, not do something that's necessary to be done at a certain time, like vacate the place because there's a conflict or there's an emergency. We need you to move aside. And if you say, no, I'm not going to move aside, like now you're interfering with a crime. That's what causes the conflict with the uniform and people to be afraid of the uniform. The uniform is there to help, to resolve, to solve, to clear up an accident, to do a lot of things that are very important to the community. And so I don't have fear of the police officer myself because I understand that.
Right.
But there are people that do, that have been arrested by a police officer. Now they're afraid of them, and
Well, I've been arrested, but I'm not afraid.
okay. And I'm
deserved
glad
it.
you're not. I'm glad you're not. And because
No, I deserved it.
that's not our purpose to instill fear in our community. Our purpose is to relate. And that's the leadership from the top. I want everybody understanding that we're here to relate to the community. We're here to provide for the community, to serve the community. And if there is a emergency type situation, we may have to get autocratic and dictatorial. We may have to tell you, get out of that burning building now.
Yeah.
Get out of that building.
So-
and don't argue with me. I need you to just do it.
Yeah.
And that's when the public needs to respect the police uniform and say, okay, I'll do what you tell me to do. But there are situations, we pulled somebody over for a broken taillight, and it's not necessarily to write a ticket for the broken taillight. It's to find out, notify the person that, hey, your taillight's broken, you may not have known it, and find out, let me have a driver's license, make sure you have driver's license, registration, insurance, stuff like that. And if they don't have insurance, it's like, okay, you're driving around with insurance, you're endangering people that you may hit. So we learn things from our contacts.
Right.
But it's all in how you deal with it. It's how you relate to people. You treat people like they're your own family, like they're adults. You treat them like adults. You treat them with respect.
So-
and people will treat you back normally.
Body cams, you think they're a plus or a minus for
I think they're a
Metro?
plus. I like body cams.
So if you have an officer that goes through a situation and his body cam's off,
Well, we'll have to
do you
deal with the specifics on why.
right?
And if it doesn't add up, then we deal with it.
Okay.
If it adds up, then okay, we understand it. But I think body cams.
Do you think it makes them more aware of their
Absolutely,
interactions?
absolutely.
And because look, they're human beings, and we'd all like to think that we are all, when nobody's watching, we're still good guys. But that's not always true. And so I think the body cams help that. It's just that little extra kick that says, hey, we know you're going to do okay, but this is as much to protect you as it is the public.
Everybody's always looking at the police officer because the perspective is that they could be doing wrong. They're wrong all the time, But
No, I'm not saying they're wrong all the
I'm
time.
just saying people
Yeah.
want the body cams on them so that we can stop them from being criminals or hurting
But it
people or
also
abusing
protects
people.
them.
That's what I'm saying. So when the body cams are on there and they're on, it exposes the faults of the community too, because there are people in the community that are very abusive to authority, to
course.
police, and this exposes that. I had one officer that he was a smaller officer and he was very active. Let's put it that way. He didn't just sit in his patrol car and do nothing. He was constantly engaging in the community, and he subsequently wrote a lot of tickets, made a lot of car stops, violations that he was detecting. And I would come in from the weekend, from our weekend, and I'd have 2-3 complaints on my desk for this one officer every time. And I go, man, and again, every weekend I was getting a complaint on this guy. And you'd think there's definitely something wrong with this officer. But he always recorded his stops. I mean, this was before the body cams.
Right.
He had a recording device, and I would listen to the citizen. This officer was abusive. He called me names. He did this and that, and then he wrote me 2 tickets, and they weren't justified. And so I would call him in and say, what happened? That's after listening to the citizen. Now I'd call him in, interview him, and I'd have to do this every time there was a complaint. And lo and behold, he would have a recording, and it would have his voice on it, it would have their voice on it, and you would hear the person in the car using the profanity towards my officer. But he was complaining about the officer using profanity towards them.
Right.
And it was like, so then I would listen to the whole recording, and I would look at the citation. The guy didn't have insurance, or the guy had taillight out.
Sure.
And so I'd have to call the citizen back. I'd say, sir or ma'am, do you know that I have a recording of your entire car stop and the interchange that took place, and they'd hang up on me. They just hang up on me.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important. I think it's very important. It protects our officers.
Oh, good. Yeah,
and it
do
protects
too.
the community.
Like I say, it goes both ways.
Yes.
It protects the public and it protects the officer as well.
Yes.
So I'm familiar with an officer who was involved in his second shooting here recently, and he hasn't been on the force that long. And because of the body cams, they were absolutely justified. And had he not had his body cam on, he could have been in some deep poo. So
I agree with you.
anyway, so anything else you'd like to share, or because we're getting about to the end of the rope here?
Okay. I just appreciate going to my website again and vetting me, and also other candidates as well that have the opinions that you need to research, so that we can get our state back in good graces, good standings. We really need to search out our candidates, and all the way up and down, and get out and vote. June 14th, get out and vote.
And your website again?
StanHeitForSheriff.com.
And that's HYT.
HYT.
Okay.
Shortest name on the ballot.
There you go. All right. So for all you people who go into the voting booth and just vote for people with short names, here's one of your candidates. Stan, thank you very much.
John, thank you for having me on your show.
Appreciate you
Absolutely.
coming in and sharing all your ideas. And folks, just get out there and vote.
Yes.
You know, it's. I've heard people say that, well, if my vote counted, it does. I mean, when you look at some of the small comparisons between candidates that have won by 6 votes, yeah, your vote counts. So get out there, especially now. We need it more than ever. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please share this. And if you are a candidate for running for any office, please get a hold of us here at WWDBTV.com, and we will get you on and we'll get your story out. Thank you very much, and thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.